Hey guys, David. This is Express Auto Transmission. We like to play with transmissions here, and we like having you guys here watching our videos. So thank you guys for watching. Welcome back. We're gonna go see what's on the bench today.
This is the 456 hub. This is the shaft.
The idea behind that is to get as much oil to the fourth clutch as quick as you possibly can. And we've got a beautiful backing. So we have our first sign of why this thing failed. We're back. Sorry guys, I'm excited. We got a Mercedes 722.6 on the bench. This is out of a 2008 Jeep Patriot. Vehicle has around 180,000 miles on it. Came in with a no move condition, so we are going to take it apart and see what we've got inside of it and talk about some of the stuff that we do whenever we rebuild it and go on from there. So, time to get the air gun out. Take the pan off first. I can get my socket back. That doesn't look good at all. I am using a 7mm socket and a 1/4" drive ratchet here. We're taking out this little bolt in the center of the pass-through connector. This is a known issue with this transmission. These seals are really bad about shrinking and causing problems. But the biggest problem they have is they actually leak fluid into the inside of the case connector, and the fluid will wick up the transmission harness and it'll actually erode the harness and cause a lot of connectivity problems and a lot of issues with the wiring itself. I have seen in extreme cases where it actually made the transmission fluid made it all the way from the transmission to the ECM and actually flooded the ECM with transmission fluid. It was a very rare case. It's not something I see very often, but in that vehicle, we actually had a problem of communication. It wouldn't shift right. It wouldn't do a bunch of stuff right. And when we took the harness apart, we actually found that it took fluid all the way to the ECM. We ended up having to replace the ECM, the wiring harness, case connector, and some other stuff. So if you've got one in that is leaking, very good idea to change this thing. A little dirty, a little nasty looking. Looks like it's had some water in it, but the guy dropped this thing off and it was raining pretty hard, so I'm thinking he may not have had the holes all sealed up whenever it got here. Get the valve body off here.
This thing does not have a lot of bolts.
It does not. Mercedes was really nice about that. The way that their castings are designed, it's kind of goofy, but it works really well. This is another key area. This is something that we actually still see quite a bit of. This one we can tell has been updated with the new style plug that's in it. This is the connector plate or conductor plate, whatever you want to call it, for this transmission. Inside of here is the input and output speed sensor. We see a lot of these come in where these speed sensors have failed. The only known fix is to replace the entire board. I recommend using OE parts only. There's a lot of aftermarket ones out there that guys claim work good and yada yada yada. Don't care, they suck. Use OE parts here. This is something that is extremely important on this transmission. So we're gonna set the valve body to the side and get the pump out of it. You guys will notice that there's a threaded hole here and a threaded hole here. On the back side of the case, there's supposed to be a bolt in this location and the opposing location. I took those bolts out before we hung this transmission because once it's hanging on the bench like this, you cannot get to those 2 bolts. If you're going to take one of these things apart and you don't take those 2 bolts out and you start hitting it with a hammer, you'll break the bell housing. I've seen a lot of guys do it. Make sure you get those 2 bolts. Now we're gonna get all of our little bolts out of here. Oh, the fun begins, the fun begins. Let's start seeing what we got inside of this thing, guys. Gonna start by getting our clutch stack out of here. This snap ring is selective. If you are having a clearance issue, you can change that snap ring to get a different snap ring to fit there. This little snap ring right here can be a real chore to get out. So what I like to do, if I've got one that's stuck, is actually press the Belleville spring down and get it to pop out that way. Usually though, to get it to come out, you can just kind of pop along the sides and it'll come out of there. This snap ring is actually like a lot of the late model Ford snap rings. You'll notice that it's actually a stepped snap ring. If you put this thing in upside down, it will pop out the first time that it applies. I can tell you from experience, it's not a good time. Now we're going to take these bolts out. That guy's stuck. That's okay. We got a tap. Or punch. For some reason I thought that guy popped out of the back of there a little easier than that, but we'll get it out of there here in a minute. Alright, so we have our first sign of why this thing failed. That is the ear that is supposed to be on this pump gear. Notice that the pump gear is actually physically broken right here. This is not a common failure for this transmission. If you guys are working on this thing and you see one do this, you need to ask yourself why. This case, we know what happened. The customer said that he had issues on installing the torque converter previously, so that's where we knew where we were going. But if you do have that problem, you need to back up and you need to figure out why. That is not a super common problem on the 722s. So, I get our bell housing set off to the side here, pull that last piston out, and I'll get the support out of it here in a little bit. But for now, we're going to set this out of our way. If you guys didn't notice on the stator side of it, the bearings and the 722.6 aren't like your standard bearing. See if I can get that other bearing off of there real quick to show you. Nope, that one didn't want to pop off. So the bearing race is actually made onto the back of this hub, and the bearing on the other side is not captivated. So typically you have a bearing that has 2 pieces and it's held together and never separates. Mercedes likes to do theirs different, and they have theirs as a separate piece. So get our input drum out of here. And let's see what we got inside of this guy. Notice the bearing down inside of the hub. That bearing does come out. You can service that bearing. It's a little tricky to get out of there sometimes, but you have to pry underneath the two edges right there. The bearing comes out. So that is a service item, and they do have problems. Get our input clutches out of here. See what we got inside of here. Clutches really aren't in terrible shape. It's pretty good for this training. Gonna go ahead and get our next set of clutches out. These are single-sided clutches. They don't appear to have cooked the steels or done too much. I mean, really, they look like they're in pretty good shape. All right, let's move deeper down the line. Oh no, we can't move any deeper. Now we have to remove the output shaft nut to get the output. Woo. Guys, we will be right back. I'm making a big old mess and I gotta clean it up. Get this guy off here using a 30 millimeter 12-point socket. This is another key wear area. When we first got into building these transmissions, we used to have these things come in quite a bit with this thing just wallered out. The later model ones, we haven't seen as much problem with it, but if you're working on an early one, plan on getting one. They are still available from the dealer, so. Now, let's stand the transmission back up and see if we can't pull some parts out. Get our Planetary sets out. It's a very, very fun setup Planetary system. So, we'll take it apart. I can get that pick under there. Come here. This bearing, working at it a little bit here to get it off. This is another highly wear out area that I've seen in the 722s. They don't make this bearing with all of the rollers all the way around it, and I don't know why they ever made it that way. But I have had a lot of these in here where this bearing has actually come apart and either damaged the Planetary or damaged the input shaft. So we're gonna lay that off to the side because it has to be replaced. Another Torrington bearing, another bearing race. Inside of here, we have another set of clutches. Another set of clutches in really good shape. This whole transmission is really not in too bad a shape. Sprag feels like it's holding nice. We're gonna have to take the snap ring out and take it apart and see what we got inside of it. Planetary itself, get it out of there. Another Torrington bearing. These pinions have had issues of wearing out in the past, so this is another area you need to take a little bit of time. That one, I don't know if you can see it or not, but I can actually feel it rocking. Can you see that rocking?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yep. This Planetary is junk, so gonna have to get one of those. This Planetary is a little harder to actually check for rock in it. One thing that we like to do is take a feeler gauge and check for thrust in the gear itself, up and down. I have seen them where when they have Planetary problems where they actually wear sideways into this housing, and you have to replace the whole output shaft as an assembly. All right, let's get that stuff out of there. Screwdriver! Where's my screwdriver at? I've been missing my black and yellow. That screwdriver's just been gone the last 2 days. I have to send out a rescue party or something. It's over there?
I think it's over there.
Did you steal my screwdriver? I cannot believe you stole my screwdriver.
I needed it.
Yeah, but it's my screwdriver. It's my favorite one. Poor old Stanley.
I just borrowed it. Got a transfer case apart.
It's not used to being in another man's hands, though. It's my screwdriver. All right, let's see if we can't get a snap ring out of here. We'll stop goofing around trying to talk bad about my screwdriver. Man, this thing is actually in fairly nice shape. All right, let's pull our support bolts out. All right, take a look at these guys. Definitely have had a lot of iron running through them. This thing has got a lot of iron in it. Now, parking gear. Oh. Come here, little turkey. All right, underneath the parking gear, we have 2 shims. These 2 shims don't seem like that big of a deal. And to the average Joe, they're not. But if these 2 shims are left out, you create a whole new problem for this transmission. Total in play for this transmission is very, very critical. These 2 shims are selective. If you're going to build one, get the book out, read all the way down to the bottom. It talks about these 2 shims. If you guys would like to know how to set this thing up, let me know in the comment section. We'll take a little bit of time. We'll show you guys how to set the in play correctly on a 722.6. I prefer to use a dial indicator and actually measure total in play of the transmission, as well as checking the rear section of the transmission for in play. So with that being said, this thing actually is in really good shape outside of a broken pump. We're going to update quite a few things in this transmission. We're going to put a new pump in it. Even though this connector or conductor plate is new, it looks new, we are going to put an OE conductor plate on it because that is something I'm very particular about. Pass-through connector will get replaced as well. The valve body, I don't use any brand of shift kit or valve body kit in the valve body. I will actually put it back to factory specs, vacuum testing, and verifying fluid circuits. All of the Torrington bearings that can be changed will be changed. All of the clutches will be changed. All of the seals will be changed. And overall, it will get rebuilt. New Planetary set, new sprags, so on and so forth. Pistons where it needs it, lip seals where it needs it, all of it. So with that being said, we're gonna clean some parts and move on to the next one. Thank you guys, we'll see you again.